excited. Miriam's coming. Okay. Well, then let's move into Miriam. All right. When you think of Miriam, do you think of the young girl who followed her baby brother down the Nile River? Or do you think of Miriam, the prophetess, who took the timbrel and led the women in praise and worship as they crossed the Red Sea? Or maybe, just maybe, you think of the leprous Miriam, who was upset with her brother. I can't afford a real actor, so Shirley did it for me. All right. So Miriam can be found in both Exodus and Numbers. In Exodus, it's 2:1-8, and I'm going to read a little bit on that. It says, about this time, a man and a woman from the tribe of Levi got married. The woman became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She saw that he was a special baby and kept him hidden for 3 months. But when she could no longer hide him, she got a basket made of papyrus reeds, waterproofed it with tar and pitch. She put the baby in the basket and laid it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile River. The baby's sister then stood at a distance, watching to see what would happen to him. Soon Pharaoh's daughter came down to bathe in the river, and her attendants walked along the riverbank. When the princess saw the basket among the reeds, she sent her maid to get it for her. When the princess opened it, she saw the baby. The little boy was crying, and she felt sorry for him. This must be one of the Hebrew children, she said. Then the baby's sister approached the princess. Should I go and find one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you, she asked. Yes, do, the princess replied. So the girl went and called her mother. In Exodus 15:20-21, Miriam, the prophetess, Aaron's sister, took the timbrel in her hand, and all the women went with her with timbrels and with dancing. Miriam answered them, sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. The horse and his rider he has hurled into the sea. And then we see her again in Numbers 12:1-15. When Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Cushite woman whom he had married, for he had married a Cushite woman, and they said, has the Lord indeed spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us as well? And the Lord heard it. Now the man Moses was very humble, more than any man who was on the face of the earth. Suddenly the Lord said to Moses and Aaron and to Miriam, you three, come out of that tent meeting. So the three of them came out. Then the Lord came down in a pillar of cloud and stood at the doorway of the tent, and he called out, Aaron and Miriam, and they both came forward. He said, hear now my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, shall make myself known to him in a vision and shall speak to him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my household. With him I speak mouth to mouth, even openly, and not in the dark sayings. And he beheld the form, and he beholds the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant, against Moses? So the anger of the Lord burned against them, and he departed. But when the cloud had withdrawn from over the tent behold, Miriam was leprous, as white as snow. As Aaron turned towards Miriam, behold, she was leprous. Then Aaron said to Moses, O my Lord, I beg you, do not account this sin to us, in which we have acted foolishly, and in which we have sinned. Oh, do not let her be like one dead, whose flesh is half eaten away when it comes from his mother's womb. Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, O God, heal her, I pray. But the Lord said to Moses, if her father had put spit in her face, she would not bear her shame for 7 days. Would she not bear her shame for 7 days? Let her be shut up for 7 days outside the camp, and afterwards she may be received again. So Miriam was shut up outside the tent for 7 days, and the people did not move on until Miriam was received again. Something just hit me right here. I had a brother and a sister, so there was 3 of us. And Mom said this to me all the time. You three come out here. So I kind of got, when I heard that, it's like flashback to Mom. I was in trouble. If she ever called all three of us out, oh Lordy, we were in trouble. We probably deserved it, but we were in trouble. Okay, so let's look at Miriam. Miriam as the unnamed sister. In Exodus 2, 1 through 10, we read of an unnamed sister of Moses who watched over Moses at the Nile River, approached Pharaoh's daughter, and goes back to get her mother. This sister is commonly identified as Miriam. We can arrive at this because of two scriptures listing the genealogy of the family. Kevin, if you're watching this, this is what you asked me this morning. Numbers 26:59. The name of Amram's wife was Jochebed, the daughter of Levi, who was born to Levi in Egypt. And she bore Amram, Aaron, and Moses, and their sister Miriam. First Chronicles says the same thing. The children of Amram were Aaron, Moses, and Miriam. So it is clear in Scripture that Miriam is the only sister of Moses and Aaron. So we're pretty sure that little girl or that young woman, it doesn't tell her age at all. So we always in our mind, or if we watch TV, they're always depicted her as a small little girl, but we don't really know that. So they didn't tell how old she was. So Miriam had to have been a smart, trustworthy young lady. She knew why her mother was doing this. She knew the dangers. No doubt her mom gave her instructions and said many prayers for the safety of both her son and daughter. The Bible doesn't say how long it was before the princess found Moses, yet Miriam waited. She took on the job her mother gave her and did it to perfection. Once her brother had been found, Miriam, who watched from a distance, came forward and asked the Egyptian princess if she'd like to find a nurse for the child. Can you imagine the princess sitting there? Oh, what a baby! Oh, so cute! And then we like this will go, hey, you want someone to come nurse that baby? And the princess is like, well, as a matter of fact, I do. So you know, you have to think also that princess probably was like, that girl's gonna go get that mama this baby. That's cool. So that's just what I think in my head, and sometimes my head gets a little crazy. So even though she knew the baby had to be Hebrew, the princess did not use that information against Miriam or her mother. Brave though she'd been, just think about how grateful Miriam must have been when there was no trouble and her young brother was safe. Mission accomplished. So already at a young age, we're seeing some great characteristics of Miriam. I would say we've already seen that she is smart, brave, tough, steadfast. I don't know if I'd have stood on that bank that long with alligators, but she was steadfast. She stood there, and trustworthy. All of this at a very early age. So when does Miriam first appear in Scripture with her name, not just her description? Well, that would be in Exodus 15, 20 through 21, at the crossing of the Red Sea. She is referred to as the Prophetess Miriam, Aaron's sister, and she leads Hebrew women in singing, dancing, and playing the tambourines. By the way, you did an excellent job playing the tambourines. As it was the custom at the time, Miriam wrote a song to commemorate Israel's escape from Egypt. So, what do we see of Miriam in this circumstances? Well, first off, she's referred to as a prophetess, a role that was held only by a few women in the Old Testament, and she was the first. Other women who were there, and we talked about one of them, Deborah. We already talked about Deborah as a prophetess, and this is Hudlah, I don't know, I can't remember to say it. Isaiah's wife, Anna, and Philip's 4 daughters. The next thing we see is she's listed as Aaron's sister. Probably listed that way because Aaron was the oldest son and is Jewish. And my phone just heard me and came to life, and it's turned off. They asked me if I wanted to look up Moses. I'm like, all right. So, anyway, so the next thing we see is that she's listed as Aaron's sister. Probably listed that way because Aaron was the oldest son. and it's Jewish tradition to do so. Third, we see she is a leader. We see that she was followed by all the women when she sang to dance. We also know that the song she sang was one of the first songs of praise for the Israelites. Though her brothers held the positions of the foremost prophet and of high priest, Miriam had a position of influence among the Israelites as well. And she was appointed there by God as well. So in Micah 6:4, we see that she's listed with her brothers as one God sent. So indeed, I'll read that to y'all. Indeed, I brought you up from the land of Egypt. I redeemed you from the house of slavery. And I sent before you Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. So I believe here we see Miriam was what? A leader, a prophetess, and has equal dealing with her brothers. God didn't leave her out there. So now, we get to the point where Miriam learns a very hard lesson. After the episode at the sea, we next see Miriam in the wilderness narrative. Accompanied by her brother Aaron, she speaks out against Moses, faulting him for marrying a Cushite woman. But the text fails to explain the reason. The woman is not named as possibly his wife Zipporah, the known wife of Moses, or another woman. Who knows? It doesn't really say. So whether out of frustration or jealousy, Miriam and Aaron fell into a spirit of complaining and questioning God. Like her brothers, Miriam was not perfect. She led her brother to speak against Moses over a matter involving a Cushite woman. They also objected to his leadership, which I think was the real problem. I don't think it was so much the woman he married, that they might have been a little jealous of how God spoke to Moses, noting that he had no monopoly on divine communication. For this, Miriam was punished with leprosy. Aaron interceded, and she was healed after 7 days. She is kept in isolation for 7 days. And after that, the days of traveling begin again. After wandering for 40 years, we meet Miriam last in Numbers 20, 1 through 2. In this passage, she dies and is buried. She would not see the promised land, but had spent a great deal of her life leading the people in the years of wandering alongside her brother Moses and Aaron. She died in a waterless place, and the people were complaining. I find it interesting that they say that she died in a waterless place, and the first time you hear her, she's at the Nile River with lots of water. I don't know if that means anything. Maybe I should look into that, but I just found it odd. Kind of interesting. So let's summarize Miriam. She was a God-gifted leader who held an important position in her nation and must have strongly led her people in belief. Though she was far from perfect, God gave Miriam a place of authority, and she misused it for a short time. Her punishment was also for a short time, so she must have learned her lesson. I didn't mention her again about, so she must have learned her lesson. So if we are in a position of leadership, we may also fall or fail. Let us not judge Miriam, but learn from her mistake. Many years of faithfulness does not armor us against sin. Every day, the evil one tempts us. Only constant watchfulness keeps him from the door. Yet when we draw close to Jesus, we can live faithfully for him. Now, I know Miriam was kind of short, which works out good because we're going to do the sister secret sister gifts. So, any questions on Miriam? Any insight on Miriam? Any Miriams in the room? I like Miriam. I think she's just like an honest old country girl. Just leading them all and dancing. I love it. All right. We ain't got no questions. Let me say something. Now, hang on. Kevin, I hope you learned something.